This is the Energy Makers Show, featuring the innovators, financiers, and policymakers focused on the global energy demand. Brought to you by NRG, moving clean energy forward. And here's your host, Paul Dickerson.
Hi, I'm Paul Dickerson, and welcome to another episode of the Energy Makers Show. Today we meet John Calaway, a founding partner and director of development at Pattern Energy, a 20-year veteran of the oil and gas industry who has found some tremendous success in the wind power industry. All that right after this.
At BKD, we understand the constantly shifting nature of the energy industry. As a national CPA and advisory firm, we serve energy clients from the beginning to the end of the cycle. Our experienced energy advisors serve approximately 300 energy companies in exploration, midstream, downstream, oilfield services, and power production. Plus, we're the largest North American member of the Praxity Global Alliance, which means we can help you wherever you operate. Contact a BKD advisor or visit us online to learn more.
This is the Energy Makers Show, brought to you by NRG, moving clean energy forward. And now, back to the Energy Makers Show with your host, Paul Dickerson.
Welcome back to the Energy Makers Show. Our guest now, John Calaway, one of the founding partners and director of development for Pattern Energy. John?
Nice to see you, Paul.
Great to have you on the program.
Thanks so much.
So tell us about Pattern Energy.
Well, Pattern Energy is a large independent power producer that is focused on wind energy, particularly, and renewable energy. So we also dabble in and are growing as well in solar energy, but primarily we are a wind energy producer.
Well, and not just a producer. You develop the projects. I mean, you're
right.
All things.
We do. We really start from the very beginning, which is really the atmospheric science. We do the land acquisition. We do a lot of all the environmental permitting. We do the financing, construction, operations, and really kind of beginning to end.
Soup to nuts.
That's right.
All right, so how much power are you producing?
Currently, we are producing nearly 1,500 megawatts on the ground, and I anticipate being up to nearly 2,000 megawatts by the end of the year, under many projects under construction. So that, kind of in a ballpark of over 1 million homes on average are served with completely clean energy from our wind production.
Well, I was excited to have you on because, especially now with all of this inexpensive natural gas, there are some in the renewable industry and some of those who finance the renewable industry that have had concerns about, all right, what is cheap natural gas going to do to the wind market? Mm-hmm. Well, what's your take?
Well, I mean, I think it's true that it is having an impact on us. Certainly, the perception of endless abundance of natural gas. It does affect how utilities plan. Right. It does affect how governments react to mandates. It does have an impact also on forward-looking power prices. So, as you know, a lot of the power pricing and hedging and financial structuring is around heat rates and natural gas prices. So, obviously, the perception of endless low-cost gas is not particularly a great motivator for renewables at this time.
Although if you're a star in the industry, maybe it's a good opportunity to take care of the competition and rise higher.
Well, there's no doubt that there's been a weeding out in our industry. There's no question. I just was at the American Wind Energy National Conference, and the attendances were way down. There's a lot of pressure on particularly small companies, and frankly, I've always been a big fan of little independents. They're always really part of the creative juices, and they're having a really rough time right now. And for companies like us that are well funded and strong financially with a lot of cash flow, there's certainly a lot of opportunities for acquisitions.
Sure, absolutely, and in their minds for great partnerships where you can come in and help them achieve goals that they couldn't achieve on their own.
Exactly. When I started my small company, which was acquired by a much bigger company, things were a lot different. You could have a few $1 million and kind of be really creative and come up with a good prospect and bring in some capital from larger companies and do well. I think those days are much more difficult. It's much more difficult this time for that.
Well, and when we talk about inexpensive natural gas, we're beginning to see some permitting for the export of natural gas.
Right.
How do you see that affecting the wind industry?
Well, Paul, I think that's a really interesting question. It's something I've actually been paying attention to. A lot of people don't really sit around and worry about, LNG facilities being permitted, but I have been watching that. I think last week was a very interesting event where the second large facility was permitted, and indications that they're going to be trying to roll out about every 60 days another export facility. So I think that it probably won't have a direct impact on the near term in the next, let's say, 12 months. Okay. But I think it does put pressure and put kind of a floor under the backside of the forward curve of natural gas. So I think that will and is going to help in some of the big projects like here in ERCOT, particularly, right, by the way, because ERCOT being a trading market, open in a large trading market, there's a lot of interest in trying to put 10-year hedges or even 13, 14-year hedges in place to support the development and financing of large-scale wind projects.
All right, so long-term, this is good for those in the renewable power space.
Well, I think it is. I think that, any time that there's perception that there's going to be endless cheap gas, is not good for us. As a matter of fact, it's not good for the oil and gas industry either. So people aren't going to be investing when they think there's an endless glut. So I think it's very exciting that we both, from a strategic point of view, the government seems to have made the decision to go ahead and start approving more of these LNG facilities, as they did last week, and have sent indications to the market there's going to be a series of permits for these. And I think that is actually very good for us politically, for our allies. I think it's good for industry, and I think it will help to equalize the markets so that kind of get into a more of a natural balance between renewable energy and natural gas.
Well, we will be back with more with John Calaway right after this.
Welcome to this edition of The Power of People, where we explore how to bring out the best in your most valuable asset. I'm Robin Knowles, President and CEO of TDS, the Workforce Performance Experts. Today we're talking with Fran Mackin about team effectiveness. Thanks for joining us, Fran.
Thanks for having me, Robin.
Teams are an integral component of the energy industry. How can an organization make their teams as effective as possible?
It's critical to ensure that the team has clear objectives and that members know their individual responsibilities, and also that you have a diversity of perspectives.
Why a diversity of perspectives?
Think of the best teams that you've been on. They usually have a variety of skills and points of view. Mm-hmm. And often one person acts as a catalyst to bring out those different points of view and get people working together. In most teams, the role of the catalyst changes as the topics change. This diversity, think of it as bringing forth the team's chemistry that really fuels the energy you need to get the team objectives, innovation, and to accomplish what your goals are.
So you'd mentioned objectives, but what about setting objectives?
It's sort of like setting up a meeting. You really need to make sure when you set up the meeting that you have a clear purpose. Well, the team needs a clear purpose also. And then make sure that you have the right people invited to the meeting to accomplish your goals, much like you need the right people on the team. And then make sure that the team members know what they're responsible for. And set milestones, key dates that everyone knows again what's expected, and also expectations for how they're going to work together. Ensure there's clear communication so that everyone on the team understands their role and how they'll contribute to the team's success.
So meetings can be quite large with lots of people in there.
That's right. You really need to strike a balance between the size of the team, making sure that you have the right people on the team, but not too large so it's hard to work together. Also, you need to look at the team so you can track individual progress. And remember, don't focus exclusively on the team. You need to set up the team for success by setting up the individual for success.
Well, thank you so much, Fran. This has been another edition of The Power of People. Join us again next time to learn more about how you can develop excellence in your workforce while getting the best possible ROI for your human capital.
This is the Energy Makers Show, brought to you by NRG, moving clean energy forward. And now back to the Energy Makers Show with your host, Paul Dickerson.
Continuing on with John Calaway, one of the founding partners and director of development for Pattern Energy. I find your experience fascinating about how you found your way to the wind industry. Would you mind sharing with the audience some of your entrepreneurial background?
You know, I came out of the oil business, exploration and production, spent 20 years doing that, built a company, took it public, retired from the industry and
to do something pretty cool.
To make art. Yeah, I'm kind of a creative person by nature. So I like to make art, but I missed the business world, really. I missed working with people and really smart people. So I came back in through seeing wind in Europe, in Spain actually. I was in the Bilbao at the Guggenheim, driving to Barcelona and saw my first huge large wind farm. And I just was fascinated by it. Inspired, and came back and started getting in the business. And everybody looked at me like I was crazy, but it's been the best thing that ever happened to me. It's just been being part of building an industry, really setting the policies of the industry, setting standards for the industry. It's kind of like being in the oil business back when old Killam would throw flour out of the back of a plane and say, go drill right there, It has a little bit of that feeling. It's getting less that way now, but it certainly feels great.
So are there others who've made this transition from traditional energy over to renewables?
There's a few, not many. I am a little bit of a lone wolf in this, but I will say that there are a lot of things that I learned in the oil and gas business that were really applicable to what I'm doing in renewables. I mean, you think about geologists, we hire meteorologists, so we're not into earth scientists, we're into atmospheric sciences.
Right.
And by the way, in our company, that is really one of our most important part of our company is we have a great atmospheric science department. We have 500 inline computers running 24/7 doing modeling of all this. And so, all that experience I had with land acquisitions, with transmission, which is like pipelines, and construction and finance and risk assessment, all that. There's great similarities between it. It's amazing, thinking about prospects. That's what I do. I'm a prospect originator. That's what I do for Pattern, is originate projects that have a reasonable chance of being successful.
Energy's energy.
Energy's energy.
You've seen the ups and downs within the wind industry,
yes.
right? I mean, you got in early, you rode
yes.
a big trend up,
yep.
but you also saw that downturn.
Mm-hmm.
You're beginning to see the rise, and I just think for that reason you have an incredible take on where we've been and where we may go.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there are a number of factors out there. I mean, obviously, having PTCs, production tax credits, coming and going is not good for domestic manufacturing and growth and stability. So, you have to kind of have a strong stomach for the up and down of government policies,
yep.
Which is unfortunate in America, but it is just the reality of when you're subsidized and you have, these type of things. But I do think that we've been making up for it by huge innovations in the actual turbines. So, when I first started, a 40-meter rotor for a wind turbine length of the
right.
would be considered huge. Now we're installing 113-meter rotors, which is longer than a football field,
Right.
And so we're able to capture so much more energy than we were, and much more efficiently per unit installed. So that's really helping us to drive the price, continue to drive the price down. And even with low gas prices in some of the areas like the Panhandle and up in the Dakotas, some of these fantastic natural resources are 50% capacity factors, which is hard to imagine from wind. So.
Well, and as you look ahead, just in 2013, for those in the wind business, any advice?
I would say be conservative in a way with how aggressive you are in what you're developing. You have to be very niche oriented. So, and normally, unfortunately, the more valuable markets come with really tough permitting challenges.
Right.
So, they're more valuable real estate. Let's call it the East Coast, West Coast syndrome.
Sure.
We, like, for example, just built a project, the first big project on Puerto Rico, the island of Puerto Rico. It's very innovative. First big project in Chile. Yeah. So we're, focused in building a business in Chile, all the way in South America. We're very active in Canada because Canada's really got a lot of incentives for people, feed-in tariffs. Right. That really make it drive. So you got to really. It's a tough place to be in the center of the United States right now.
Yes.
With the way the market is, but I've spoken to Secretary Salazar about this many times. That we need transmission out of the center of the United States. I mean, it's a God-given resource that's enormous. It never depletes.
Right.
By the way, and that's another subject we don't talk a lot about. In the oil industry, something like every day in my life I was talking about depletion problems. And the wind doesn't deplete. And America has enormous capability in the center of the United States, coupled with, solar energy, wind energy, energy storage, natural gas. Yeah. And natural gas with wind and solar really are very compatible with each other. Because natural gas turbines can be peakers, and they can perform well when wind starts coming down. They can come up quickly, and it's very efficient. So I think we need to quit fighting each other. We need oil and gas, we need renewables, and there's an orderly, long-term transition here that we need to quit fighting each other and find ways to work closely together with the goal of reducing emissions and improving the environment that we live in for our children.
Well, thank you so much for coming in. It's a great story.
Thanks, Paul.
And that wraps this episode of the Energy Makers Show, heard on the radio nationwide and seen right here at TheEnergyMakers.com. I'm Paul Dickerson, and we'll see you next week.